Thank you all so much for joining us today. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you on this Wednesday in July. We are really excited to share more with you about the COSAL Justice Catalyst um, Justice Antitrust Litigation Fellowship, named in honor of Jonathan W. Cuneo. And I do want to let you know that the recording of this info session will be made available next week along with captioning. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at fellowships@justicecatalyst.org. I've shared that email in the chat. Please don't reach out to us via the chat. I won't be able to view it, but I will be viewing the Q&A chat box, and I'll be reserving time at the end of this info session to answer questions shared in that Q&A chat box. However, you will see in the chat, as I mentioned, our email address, as well as a link to the web page with all the information I'm going over today on the Antitrust Litigation Fellowship, as well as our general fellowships webpage, since we also have a General Justice Catalyst Fellowship program. For those of you interested in learning about that general fellowship program, we are holding a webinar in the middle of August. You can email us at fellowships@justicecatalyst.org to get the registration link for that. All right. I want to just briefly introduce myself. My name is Renee Champ. I'm Deputy Director of Justice Catalyst Partnerships. I have the pleasure of running Justice Catalyst's fellowship programs, and I also get to work on our litigation financing through Justice Catalyst Access Fund. My past, actually, I was a fellow coming out of law school. I was an Equal Justice Works fellow for 4 years. So I'm very familiar with the perspective of a law student applying for fellowships, as well as the perspective of a host organization hosting a fellow. So I hope that I can answer questions from any of you who may be here with us today, whether you are a current law student, an attorney a couple years out of law school interested in applying for the fellowship, or a host law firm, or someone with a law school that's interested in learning more about the fellowship to be able to help your students apply. All right, so I want to go over a handful of things with you in this hour together. I want to share with you first a little bit about Justice Catalyst as a whole. Then we're going to go over the Antitrust Fellowship. You're going to have the pleasure of meeting Pamela Gilbert from Cuneo, who is not only the president of COSAL, but also hosted at her firm the first ever Jonathan W. Cuneo Fellow a couple years ago, and also our current fellow, Nathan Ecton, who's going to be answering questions and sharing his perspective as a candidate about the application process and then about the fellowship experience as a whole. And as I mentioned, I'll be taking questions at the end. So first, a little bit about Justice Catalyst. So we are a nonprofit that uses grant funding and philanthropic advising to support justice-focused legal innovation in a variety of ways. We have a few different entities, and we have a focus on seeding new organizations and sometimes projects at existing organizations, and on fostering collaboration between different parts of the public interest legal system that we often see are very siloed. We've provided seed or early stage funding for dozens of organizations and projects, and some of the organizations or projects that we launch are relatively in-house. So we have an organization called Justice Catalyst Law that's focused on generating cases with broad and replicable impact and social justice impact, often using commercial tools for social justice. So, for example, JCL is involved in antitrust litigation against the bail bond industry, antitrust and other legal theories against other parts of the prison industry, cases in the housing space, drug rehabilitation, and more. And we also launched the nonprofit Justice Catalyst Access Fund, which is an organization that provides recoverable grants to support nonprofits and other public interest litigators. It's a novel structure where organizations can draw down funds to support their work and repay out of case recoveries or fee awards, and only have to pay back out of those awards if they win. If they don't win, they don't have to. Finally, the Justice Catalyst Fellowship Program is housed with Justice Catalyst Partnerships, and it helps to launch new creative projects and new legal careers. So we are so excited to get to collaborate with COSAL on this antitrust litigation fellowship. We believe that the enforcement of antitrust laws is crucial to promote class equity in the United States, and that by preventing large corporations from dominating markets and engaging in anti-competitive practices, the antitrust laws help create a level playing field for small businesses and consumers, leading to increased competition, innovation, and fair prices. This, in turn, can help reduce economic inequality and promote a more equitable distribution of wealth and opportunities for all. So that is an underlying goal of our fellowship program. And I want to share a little bit more about the collaboration and the basics of this fellowship program. So first of all, there are in-person and hybrid opportunities available with antitrust litigation firms nationwide. This is a one-year fellowship with the potential of up to one additional year of renewal for the fellowship via litigation funding. And the salary for a fellow is determined jointly between the host law firm and the fellow, and is to be no less than that of a similarly qualified and experienced lawyer at the host law firm. The salary range for the firms participating is generally between 100,000 and 200,000 annually, and it depends on the firm and on the candidate's years of experience. Health insurance and fringe benefits are also provided by the host firm. And there is the potential for the host law firm at its discretion to offer a full-time attorney position to the fellow coming out of their fellowship. So I just realized I skipped ahead on slides, but I want to make sure that you all know that all this information is also available on our webpage. So you can go to the Justice Catalyst Fellowship webpage and find all of these basics about the fellowship program. So this is a really incredible opportunity for folks coming right out of law school who are interested very specifically on antitrust litigation as a career. We have the opportunity to engage not only with Justice Catalyst's General Fellowship, which provides a really incredible peer network and cohort. We do workshops, we have a book club, a lot of community building and opportunity to engage with folks right out of law school who are doing a lot of various different types of work, but then also access to opportunities with COSAL specifically, which Pam is going to speak to a little bit more in a moment. And then, of course, the opportunity to work at a top plaintiff side antitrust litigation firm throughout the US. So here are some basics on the application timeline. Again, all of this is on our website. It's a multi-step application process. So the first thing that you do is you look at our website where you'll see a list of participating firms, which I'm going to share with you in a moment. Identify whether you want to apply to one or more of those firms to basically go through a selection process to become their candidate for the fellowship application process. Once you go through that process with the firm or firms that you're interested in being hosted by for the fellowship, if you are selected, then you will work with the firm and you will submit an application through the Justice Catalyst website. That application is currently open. The deadline is September 15th, and you can go see on our website very clearly laid out every single application question in advance. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us again at fellowships@justicecatalyst.org. And then we will be going through a review process, COSAL as well as Justice Catalyst. There's a review committee, and select candidates who have submitted an application with a participating host firm will then be invited to interview with COSAL. And then coming out of that interview round, some select candidates will interview with Justice Catalyst, and then one or more fellows will receive an offer to be a fellow and be hosted at the firm that they applied with. So again, I'm going to take questions because I know it is a multi-step application process that's not as common in the plaintiff side firm world as it is in the nonprofit sector. So please don't hesitate to chat any questions that you have, and we will be turning to those at the end. Again, this timeline is available on our website that's linked in the chat. So before we continue, I want to share a little bit about the human who this fellowship is named after, Jonathan W. Cuneo, a co-founder of COSAL, a prominent figure in antitrust litigation, championing consumer rights against influential entities. The Jonathan W. Cuneo COSAL Justice Cause Fellowship is a tribute to his legacy. It's focused on fostering a path for emerging leaders in antitrust litigation to continue the pursuit of accountability against powerful entities. And we have a quote from John on our website that I really love and want to share with you, which is, "The job of a plaintiff's lawyer is to trouble people who are accustomed to stealing in peace." With that, I want to hand it over to Pamela Gilbert of the firm Cuneo, Gilbert, and LaDuca, as well as the executive director of COSAL. She is a rock star. She has over 35 years of experience in advocacy work in Washington, D.C. She's testified over 50 times and has also made dozens of appearances in national print and electronic media. So with that, I will hand it over to Pam to share a little bit from the COSAL and host law firm perspective. Hi, Pam.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Renee. I always enjoy being on this webinar and participating in this fellowship program. So great to be here. So yeah, let me tell you a little bit about COSAL and what this fellowship is all about. COSAL is the committee to support the antitrust laws. I put the link to our website in the chat as well. So if you want to learn more, you can go there on your own. COSAL was established in 1986 to promote and support the enactment, preservation, and enforcement of a strong body of antitrust laws in the United States. It is the only organization in the U.S. that is dedicated to lobbying for strong antitrust laws with an emphasis on effective private enforcement. Our membership includes a little bit over 50 plaintiffs' antitrust law firms from all across the country that prosecute private antitrust cases. The firms primarily bring class action lawsuits on behalf of consumers and small businesses and workers against large corporations and monopolists that violate the antitrust laws. As Renee described, my late law partner, Jonathan Cuneo, helped to found COSAL in 1986 after working as an antitrust counsel for the House Judiciary Committee. John realized that as antitrust counsel, he was faced with armies of lobbyists for big businesses walking the halls of Congress advocating to weaken the antitrust laws. And from John's perspective, the only people that were holding the line against these attacks were a handful of law professors, handful of state attorneys general, and congressional staff like John who cared. There were no pro-antitrust enforcement lobbyists coming to his office. So after he left Capitol Hill, John worked with leaders of the plaintiffs' antitrust bar to create the committee to support the antitrust laws to be that force in favor of strong antitrust enforcement. We're so pleased to say that 40 years later, we are still going strong. And in fact, we are stronger and bigger than ever. And as many of you probably know, supporting antitrust and competition and fighting against monopolies is actually quite popular now. And there are many more organizations that have been created over time to join us as allies in our efforts to promote and support the antitrust laws. So COSAL, in addition to its policy mission, has long had a goal of encouraging recent law graduates to become plaintiff antitrust lawyers, which again, back in the day, was a little more obscure as a career. I think more and more people are aware of the plaintiff's practice, which we're very excited about. But so COSAL, in addition to being focused on bringing new lawyers into our profession, we're also focused on increasing the diversity within our bar, within the antitrust plaintiffs practice. And experience has shown us that bringing in new lawyers helps expand diversity. So we're very, very excited to partner with Justice Catalyst to offer opportunities to new lawyers to try out the plaintiff's antitrust practice and give these fellows an opportunity to participate in important groundbreaking litigation and also to engage with the broader policy work of COSAL. The fellowship also offers great networking opportunities at the various COSAL events that are held throughout the year. So I look at the COSAL fellowship really as being two parts. So the first part is that the fellow works as an associate at a COSAL member firm and must be assigned to at least one antitrust litigation. So the COSAL member firms are involved in most of the leading cutting edge antitrust actions in a wide variety of industries, including big tech, big ag, food companies, big pharma, healthcare companies, financial services. It really runs the gamut. COSAL firms also represent workers against companies that are using their market power to decrease wages and worsen working conditions. Basically, anywhere there's corporate concentration and opportunities for anti-competitive behavior, COSAL firms are there to help police the marketplace. And the COSAL Justice Catalyst Fellow gets to work at one of these firms and, as I said, work on at least one of these litigations. The other piece of the fellowship is engaging with COSAL. So this includes attending in-person COSAL events that occur throughout the year and participating in COSAL committees. The events provide the fellow an opportunity to network with lawyers from other COSAL member law firms and often to hear speakers from Capitol Hill or federal or state agencies or other leading nonprofits. So, for example, this year, COSAL is celebrating our 40th anniversary with a gala dinner in Washington, D.C. Our keynote speaker is going to be former FTC Commissioner Rebecca Slaughter. And as you may know, you might recognize her name. Commissioner Slaughter led the case challenging the Trump administration's right to fire independent agency commissioners without cause. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled against Commissioner Slaughter in a 6-3 decision recently, but she really fought a great fight all through to the Supreme Court, and she'll be our speaker in November. Another piece of COSAL, in addition to going to events, is the committee work, as I mentioned. And our committees, this isn't all of them, but they include our amicus committee, where a fellow can work on an amicus brief filed in a federal appellate court or the Supreme Court. We did file an amicus brief in the Trump v. Slaughter case. We have a policy committee where we help analyze and comment on federal legislation and executive branch policies, and sometimes lobby members of Congress and their staffs. We have a climate and antitrust committee, which authored an article published in the Georgetown Law School's Environmental Law Review that concluded that agreements among competitors to follow sustainable business practices generally do not violate the antitrust laws. And we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, which sponsors a summit every year for individuals who are underrepresented in the plaintiffs' bar. And that's just a sampling of the committees that COSAL has and a fellow gets to participate in over the course of the fellowship. So I'll just conclude by saying that really my favorite part of my practice these days is when I get a chance to interact with either law students or young lawyers who are passionate about social justice and economic equality and see the antitrust laws as a key tool in achieving those goals and want to get involved as antitrust enforcers. So I can't be more enthusiastic about the Jonathan W. Cuneo COSAL Justice Catalyst Fellowship Program and happy to be here today. So that's that, and I'll turn it back to Renee.
Thank you so much, Pam. And I'll just note that since Pam had the opportunity to serve also as a host law firm for our first ever fellow through this program, when we get to the Q&A portion at the end, if you have any questions specifically about the host law firm experience or anything in that vein, please feel free to direct those questions to Pam and we'll get to them. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much, Pam. It is such a pleasure to collaborate with you and COSAL and all of the member firms for this program.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks, Renee.
on that note, I want to make sure you all are aware of the firms participating this year. So, just to be clear, every host law firm is a member of COSAL. The participating firms in the fellowship change year to year. Firms elect to select a candidate and apply to the fellowship with that candidate. So on our website, you will see all of this information about this year's participating firms and how to reach out to them in order to inquire about being considered for candidacy to move forward as their candidate for the application. So a couple of the firms have emails here, and well, they all have emails, and a couple of them, when you go to the site, you'll see actually have a job posting published. And so they are in process right now of collecting and reviewing inquiries and applications from folks who are current law students or up to a few years out of law school and are interested in being employed at their firm as a fellow through this program. So, if you are interested in applying for the fellowship, the first step that you take is you look on our webpage at this list of participating firms and you say, oh, I'd be interested in being hosted at three of these firms, or one of these firms, or five of these firms. You reach out to those firms at the email provided here and let them know you're interested in being considered for candidacy for the COSAL Justice Catalyst Fellowship. And then they will tell you each firm will have its own internal recruiting and selection process. You'll go through that process with them. If you have submitted an application to more than one of the participating firms to be considered as a fellow candidate with their firm for this particular fellowship, please be transparent with those firms and let them know that you have reached out to several of them and whether or not you're being considered by multiple of them. And go through that process. If one or more of the participating firms are interested in your candidacy, again, make sure that they know so that they can each have a different candidate to then submit an application through our website. If you have any questions, again, it's on our webpage, clearly laid out as a multiple step process there of reaching out to a participating firm, going through a selection process with them, and then going ahead and applying for the fellowship itself in collaboration with a host law firm that has selected you as their candidate. Okay, so if you are selected by one of the participating firms as a candidate for the fellowship, you will then go to our webpage and submit an application. There are several essay questions that we ask you to complete. And again, you just submit the answers online through our webpage. Um, you can view, as I mentioned earlier, every single essay question there on our webpage. The application is open right now. The application deadline is September 15th, which means that right now you should be reaching out to any participating firms you're interested in so that they can move forward, select a candidate before that September 15th deadline. And then if you are selected as a candidate, you can then submit that application. Another element of the application is the host commitment letter. All of the participating firms are aware of this requirement. They will draft the letter and they should give it to you as a PDF that you can then upload with the online application. Any questions about any of this, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll turn to it at the end of this webinar. So just to reiterate, there's if you are selected as a candidate to apply for the fellowship with one of the participating firms, you'll first have an interview with the COSAL review committee. A select number of folks coming out of those interviews will then have an interview with Justice Catalyst. And from there, we will be making final decisions and notifying folks who are selected for the fellowship by phone by October 31st. So I alluded to this earlier, but I just want to reiterate a little bit more about the programming for the fellowship. Not only do you have access to the incredible opportunities that COSAL provides that are specific to antitrust, you also have this really incredible cohort of recent law school graduates placed at nonprofits, unions, government agencies, and firms through our general Justice Catalyst Fellowship, working across a wide range of issue areas with multiple different strategic litigation approaches. And it's a really incredible interdisciplinary group of folks sharing about their work, sharing and problem solving challenges coming up in their work, and getting to attend really incredible workshops with national experts across a range of issue areas and approaches. We also have a non-mandatory mentorship and book and movie club that is really fun. So, without further ado, I want to share the opportunity to hear with Nathan, our current COSAL Justice Catalyst Fellow, based at the law firm Scott and Scott in New York City. His work has focused on combating price fixing, monopolization, and collusive agreements that restrict market competition. And he's going to share with you all a little bit more from his perspective as both an applicant and a fellow. So, with that, I will hand it over to you, Nathan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Renee, and no problem. I'm happy to be here because I have had an incredible experience as the Justice Catalyst Fellowship, and I could not recommend it more, first of all. But I just wanted to give a little background on why I was interested in the Coastal Fellowship in the first place, my application experience, as well as some work that I've done as an attorney with Scott and Scott, my host firm, and working with COSAL in as an organization. So to start, to begin, I was a law student in Washington, D.C. at the George Washington University Law School. I graduated in 2025, took the bar exam last summer, and have been working with at Scott and Scott Attorneys at Law in New York City ever since then. Scott and Scott is a plaintiff side law firm specializing in antitrust litigation. We also do securities work and consumer protection work. But I, as a fellow, have been focusing entirely on antitrust litigation. And just to start, I was interested in the COSAL Fellowship because I knew I wanted to work in the antitrust world. I found the subject and legal heading of antitrust to be very compelling, a very compelling way to affect a broad range of people through litigation, as well as keeping businesses in check that I feel like don't have enough checks upon them, and doing so with a private firm surrounded by like-minded individuals. And becoming a attempting to get a job of this nature as somebody coming out of law school is traditionally very difficult. Typically, you are required to have certain years of experience before even being considered for a job like this. And so, a fellowship like the Jonathan W. Cuneo Fellowship is a very good way to sort of surpass that expectation and standard typically associated with jobs of this nature. And I felt that this was a great way to be able to pursue my passion for antitrust litigation and do so in an accessible way where I can do work that I want to do as soon as possible. And so I decided to dive into the application process. And as laid out by Renee, it is a bit of a unique application process that is unlike most jobs out there, because you sort of need to go through two different stages of application. The first being reaching out to the various law firms, and depending on your preferences of location and type, I think generally you can apply to each one and really express your interest, because each of the firms that are associated with COSAL and the ones that are open for applications now are all incredible firms at the forefront of antitrust litigation, and firms that I know people at and have had experience working with in my short stint with Scott and Scott so far since last September. So I could not recommend each of those names enough. But yes, so as instructed by Renee, I reached out to the names associated with each firm and provided my materials. And I think my recommendation is to really show passion for why you want to work in the antitrust realm. You don't need to have decided to go into antitrust from the day you were born to get a job like this, but I do think it's important to really emphasize why you believe antitrust is important and why you are interested in it. And I think that is ultimately what helped me get this job and enjoy it to this day. So, now in terms of the work I do every day, I work entirely on antitrust litigation. So I am treated as a first year associate would be. I essentially am a first year associate, and with that, in the antitrust world comes a massive variety of projects that you're working on. Since you're not with a huge defense firm surrounded by 100 other first year associates, you really get hands-on work immediately, which is another incredible benefit of this job. So with Scott and Scott, we have about five other associates in the New York office that I work with very closely, as well as others around the United States. But I have a wide variety of tasks. To start, I work on two different antitrust litigation active cases, as well as research new cases to potentially bring um, toward the firm, which is sort of always in the back of your mind, is looking for new cases and doing research, which is an incredible part of the job, is the case starting aspect of the job. But I have two cases, which are a traditional Section 1 Sherman violation, conspiracy to price fix, as well as my other case is a Sherman 2 monopolization case, which are a little rarer in the private antitrust litigation space, um, and a different beast in some capacities, but also very interesting. And so my tasks have ranged massively, oftentimes taking the first draft of writing litigation drafts, such as motions to compel, letters to opposing counsel, leading and negotiating meet and confers regarding discovery issues, privilege reviews, requests for production, search terms, um, writing certain sections of complaints. Let's see, what else have I done? Tried to locate industry experts to hire before the case, as well as generally be the case expert, know where all the materials are, manage the online repositories, and lead check-in meetings, and generally be everybody's one-stop shop for any materials related to the case. Um, so that's a broad overview of my work. There's so much to go into that I can't answer directly. Um, but that would be a snapshot of my day to day. Now, in terms of what I've done with COSAL, as alluded to by Renee, there are a variety of subcommittees that operate within COSAL. So I have worked with the Young Lawyers Division subcommittee within COSAL during my time as a fellow, which involves working with other young attorneys in the antitrust space and coming together to put together events across various cities in the United States to connect young antitrust associates with one another. It's been a really great experience. And antitrust litigation is a relatively small world, as you'll come to learn, and it's been an incredible way to meet fellow like-minded peers, um, who more than likely you will work with later on, since antitrust litigation is also such a collaborative environment where you work with co-counsel often just as much as you work with your own firm. As well as I've attended numerous coastal events not associated with the Young Lawyers Division, which is another great way to get involved with the relatively small antitrust bar. Um, I'll finish with, let's see, how the fellowship has been helpful in the course of my career path right outside of law school. And I think this sort of alludes to my point at the beginning, which is becoming an antitrust litigator right out of law school is oftentimes a very difficult goal to achieve because of the expectations of having work experience before entering this space. And I think fellowships including this one and beyond, are a great way to sort of pass a stepping stone across the river to be able to do that right outside of law school and gain hands-on experience right away. And COSAL has been incredible for that, and I could not recommend it enough. And I'm open to any questions you may have, whether now on this call or through email. Please reach out to me. I am an open book and your resource. So hopefully that's a good introduction, but happy to answer questions after this.
Thank you so much, Nathan. It's so excellent to hear so much about the substance of your experience and the range and diversity of experiences that you have gained in just your first year out of law school. Just listening to you describe the crucial, pivotal role that you play on multiple cases, as well as getting to work up potential new cases right out of law school, it's remarkable. I think about some of my friends going into big law right out of law school, just doing doc review, sitting at their desks. And yeah, I also love hearing about the collaborative nature with co-counsel. It's just really incredible. And I should just add that thanks to Nathan's incredible work, in just 1 year, he has accepted an offer from his host law firm to remain on as a full-time permanent attorney at the firm. So I do really want to emphasize our goal with this fellowship is to broaden pathways for folks who might not otherwise be able to enter the plaintiff antitrust litigation field quite so early in their career. And I'm just so thrilled that thanks to your incredible work and this fellowship program, we have a new full-time plaintiffs antitrust litigator already hitting the road going into your second year out of law school. So thank you for that, Nathan. So we are going to take questions now, and I am going to stop sharing my screen so that I can actually view any questions that any of you may have. So again, if you have questions, please go ahead and enter them in the chat. Um, I am not actually seeing any questions right now. So go ahead and take a minute. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them in the Q&A chat. If not, and you have questions later on, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at fellowships@justicecatalyst.org. We're happy to field any questions. Our webpage has a lot of information about the fellowship application process and the fellowship itself as well. Nathan and Pam, do you have any final words that you want to share? You've both shared so much already.
Well, I will say I just dropped my email address into the chat. You can also just find it online if you look up my name through Scott and Scott. Please feel free to email me at any time with any questions you may have. I'm more than happy to answer at any time. But other than that, I just wanted to close out by saying I think this is an incredible experience, as I alluded to earlier. There's no better way to get hands-on experience in the antitrust realm, doing both great work for the world that is also rewarding while working with amazing like-minded people. I could not recommend it more. And working with incredible individuals like Renee and Pam. So thank you all. And like I said, please feel free to reach out if you need me.
Thank you so much, Nathan.
So I can't top that. That was a great closing, Nathan. So I just want to say I put my name and email address in the chat as well. So please, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. But
Thank you both. And we do have a couple questions that have come in.
awesome.
So, one question is, could you please share common qualities of former successful candidates? Is previous antitrust experience a requirement? Understanding it may vary by firm. So, absolutely varies by firm. I would say that many successful candidates, and we have two new COSAL fellows joining the cohort in the fall. So that will have been four that have been selected in the several years that this fellowship has existed. Um, Folks definitely are able to speak in a critical and thoughtful and strategic way about litigation as a tool and about the importance of antitrust in the public interest. So I do think that someone can gain the capacity to speak to the substance of the fellowship through, taking one or two antitrust classes in law school and doing like one internship that may be relevant to the field. I will say, as many of you are probably aware, there is a growing interest amongst law students across the country in antitrust litigation. And so we do get a lot of candidates that have a very deep and thoughtful take on antitrust as a litigation. Nathan, do you want to speak to that a little bit and share a little more about kind of your background and what your experience in antitrust was in law school coming into the application process?
Yes, sure. And I will say, as a precursor to that, in terms of individuals I work with, um, my peers in antitrust litigation, there is a consistent theme of passion for the subject that they're working in, which may not exist in other practice areas. I'm not exactly sure, but for people like myself and others, you can really tell there's a passion for what you do and in antitrust that may separate itself out from other realms of the law. But in terms of my background before entering the fellowship. As I mentioned earlier, I went to George Washington University Law School in DC, and I had some experience with um, with internships during my law school period that I worked at antitrust. So my 1L summer, after my 1L, I worked in the Senate Judiciary Committee with Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota as a fellow Minnesotan. I was very happy about that. And where it's not directly related to antitrust itself, but they do have an antitrust subcommittee within that broader committee that I tried to really insert myself in and try to get work around. And that's how I tried to get some antitrust background as or as early as possible in my law school career. And then my 2L summer, I worked at a small antitrust litigation firm as well. Not the firm I'm currently at, but one just outside of DC that is very small, but also gave me a perspective in antitrust litigation and how it operates. And I feel like it gave me good background and understanding of how these big class action cases work and typical expectations, how working with co-counsel operates, and just giving me a good foundation in understanding if I want to do it and um, better understanding of the types of cases that firms like mine and my former firm works at. So just trying, and I, as well as in semester, I got some opportunities at the Federal Trade Commission and Department of Justice. Um, so I think what was helpful for me is trying to get antitrust experience as early as I could to try to build that into future antitrust experience. And I think I was successfully able to do that, but it doesn't take, an internship or something that is directly related to antitrust. As I mentioned before, my 1L summer where I worked in the Senate, there was nothing related to antitrust from the broad perspective, but I tried to take that experience and find antitrust experience within it. So that would be my recommendation, and that's just how I got to my position currently.
And Nathan, did you take classes during law school that were in antitrust?
I did, yeah. I took as many classes as I could in antitrust. We had I took the classic antitrust class, which is the typical just antitrust 101 essentially, as early as I could. So my first semester of 2L, as well as some more advanced classes after that. So I think that just demonstrates your interest in the subject as well as keeps you more informed as you need to join an antitrust fellowship like this.
Pam, what would you say from a host law firm perspective, having gone through a selection process at the firm level?
Sure, yeah. So it is a really good question. So everybody understands as a host firm that these are, young, generally law students. They don't have a lot of experience in anything that's related to the law. So we understand that. So it's no. So the I think part of the question was, is it a requirement to have antitrust experience? The answer to that is no. But I think similar to what Nathan and Renee were saying, what is a requirement is to demonstrate a true interest in antitrust, in being not, that we want to sort of separate graduating law students who are just worried about a job and here's a fellowship opportunity. And sure, antitrust, that would be interesting to me, just like other things would be interesting to me. Those a candidate like that is probably not going to make the cut. But if you can demonstrate that you actually have an independent of this fellowship, an interest that you have acted on in antitrust or related topics, I think that's what we're looking for. So even so, taking a class or classes, having read articles that are about antitrust, if you didn't get an antitrust clerkship during a summer, but trying to maybe go see some arguments or wherever you were trying to learn as much about the antitrust aspects of whatever you're doing, right? So not, to show that you have a genuine interest in antitrust, again, that predates you learning about this fellowship, and that this fellowship speaks to you because you do have this independent interest and some demonstration to show that you have that interest, even if it's not actual antitrust experience.
Thank you for that, both of you. And I think I would say from Justice Catalyst perspective, we really are interested in substance, and we are not interested in GPA, for example. We're interested in people who are really committed to the work. And we're not attached to, what tier law school you went to or any of those kind of more superficial aspects. We're really interested, like Nathan and Pam mentioned, in the substance and the passion and the interest in joining the plaintiff side antitrust bar long term. So we have another really great question, which is, do you typically fund one COSAL fellow every year or more? So I want to share, yes. So we do support more than one fellow for this fellowship at times. So we've run this application process 3 years in a row now. The first 2 years we selected one fellow. The second year, this most recent year, we selected two. And basically, we have a broader cohort of fellows that I mentioned earlier through our general fellowship program that is not explicitly or exclusively focused on antitrust litigation. Although I do want to just share that we do accept fellowship applications focused on a specific antitrust litigation project based at a plaintiff side law firm, through that fellowship as well. But basically, it's completely dependent upon the strength of the candidates, and the strength of the applications that we see, how many fellows ultimately are selected. It's going to generally be in the realm of 1 to 2. However, if you think about national fellowship programs and statistical likelihood of success, the statistical likelihood of receiving this fellowship is much higher than the average national fellowship, because we only receive, I think there's like 6 participating firms this year. If you are, interested in this fellowship, apply to a participating firm. The pool of candidates applying to those participating firms is certainly less than the volume of the average national fellowship program. If you get through that selection process, your competition is only 5 other individuals, most likely, going through the selection process. So statistically, much more higher kind of likelihood of success through this fellowship program than the average national fellowship. And that was an answer also to another question about the competitiveness. So, thank you all so much for your wonderful questions. It has been a pleasure as always to be with you, Pam and Nathan. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. Looking forward to any follow-up questions that you may have. We're here to support you through this application process and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.